President Stasi Koumoutsas. We have Representative Jennifer Kennedy, will be the Speaker of the House in a few years. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd. I know he needs a lot of introduction to people around here. We've got members of the Polk State College Board of Trustees. We have School Superintendent Fred Hyde, Lakeland High School Principal Alan Doge, and members of the Polk County School Board. So I want to thank all of you for being here today. You know, we've got different things that take place in Florida usually throughout the year, and right now down in South Florida we're involved in hosting some of these World Cup soccer matches. Look, I'm a baseball guy. That wasn't my cup of tea. One of my daughters likes it. My son doesn't. Whatever. But and you know, it's not the most popular in America compared to football or some of the others. But I'll tell you, you know, we have these folks that come over, and so we had all these Scottish people come, and they're wearing the kilts, and they're like kind of like not storming in a bad way, but like out on the streets. I mean, just drinking these bars dry, like all this stuff. I mean, having a really, really good time, but yet, you know, no problems. There's no rioting, no anything like that. I mean, it was very cheerful. It was good, and I think they really enjoyed being in the United States because they went to different games across different parts of the country. I think they were in Boston before they were in the state of Florida, and evidently, you know, one of the iconic Irish pubs in Boston was hosting them, and they had a great time. And I think they actually, the bar ran out of beer because of the Tartan Army, and so they did that, and then they came down to Florida. But then in Boston, I guess the English team was playing the next week, and the day they were doing it, I think the thought was the English fans were going to go to that same Irish pub, and the Irish pub refused to open that day. They took the day off, and so I don't know if that's a statement or whatever. I do know, you know, on America 250, we can say, you know, the English's record in Massachusetts isn't that great, and we can go back and look at that. But anyway, so these guys come here, and they're able to see all this different stuff and participate. And so I just, even though it's not necessarily a sport that I've been involved with, or it's not certainly the most popular in the United States or in Florida, I think it's been a very positive exercise. I think seeing folks be able to actually see America in person instead of just what they hear through the filter of very biased media, particularly in Europe, and to be able to meet a lot of the folks. And I will tell you, the people in Florida have been very, very welcoming, very, very friendly. I got one of the fellows from Scotland was posting stuff online. They reached out. So we brought them before the game to try stone crabs in Miami Beach. Never had stone crabs before. Like, you know, so you're doing this. We're going to put that video out. And then people have been able to go around in different parts of the United States of America. So as we're getting ready to come to July 4th and hit that formal America 250 day, we do have a really great country. I know there's a lot of problems. I know we see a lot of things that we wish we could change immediately. And I know there's a lot of work to do, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And I think a lot of these people who've been able to visit from some of these other countries have gotten to see firsthand both the generosity of the American people, but also that, you know, this is a good country. And I think that they're acknowledging that. And I know we've got more of these matches going forward, and we'll do. And just for the record, there were precautions made in Miami so that they did not drink Miami dry. I know that they had some extra tankers and all this stuff. I had Kevin Guthrie in Florida Division of Emergency Management on standby. You know, normally it's like they run out of fuel at a gas station. We bring gas and we do that. Well, so no, media's going to say, oh, we did all this stuff. So it's been fun. I've enjoyed being able to meet a lot of those folks, and I was telling some of the Scots. So, you know, I grew up in Dunedin in Pinellas County, which was settled by Scots, and so Dunedin is like, I think it's a way of saying Edinburgh in like a different language. So they were basically trying to kind of bring that when they do it. And in high school, they have a Scottish Highlander band. They have the kilts and the bagpipes and do that. And so that was something that I knew from a very young age and going forward. So I've said they were so kind, contributing to our economy, model folks that, maybe we'll take a Florida Army over to Scotland at some point. I know I'd go to St. Andrews or some of these other places, and so we'll see what happens. Now, we've got to be discriminating, make sure Florida's putting on its best face. Great state, but we also have some eccentricities. I mean, that's just the nature of what we're doing. In any event, so I'm glad that Florida was one of the hosts for that. There's a bunch of different games in Miami, or matches in Miami that'll happen over the next few weeks, including, I think, the runner-up match, third-place match, is going to be in Miami, and we'll see. And, I'll obviously root for the United States on that. And I know that we're usually not favored to do that. And I don't know a lot about the sport, but just, watching the Brazil, you can tell they're good. I mean, you can just see that by watching the athletic competition. All right, so we're here today. We're going to talk about a great education announcement. But before I do that, we're finishing up the budget for next fiscal year, which starts July 1st. We're still making decisions on some of the individual items that I have to make judgments on for line item vetoes. But I think I can say definitively the budget that I'll sign starting July 1st will spend less than the current fiscal year we're in. And I definitely can say the current fiscal year spent less than the previous fiscal year. And that previous fiscal year spent less than the fiscal year before that. 4 years in a row where the budget will have been decreased. And overall, I mean, because, they'll say, oh, we're spending $115 billion, then they'll put other stuff they don't count. We count it all. So if you count, every part of the bill, all these bills, where we were 4 years ago was still lean. I mean, we were still lean. It wasn't like that was a lot, right? That was still less than half of New York State's budget, and we have millions of more people. But how many other states are actually reducing spending and doing it in a 4-year period in the face, mind you, of persistent inflation? This is nominal dollars that the budget's going down. It's not even adjusted for inflation. Obviously, if you adjust it for inflation, it's way less than it was 4 years ago. I mean, noticeably less. And if you adjust for population growth, that would also make it. So we're not even adjusting for that. We've had population growth, we've had inflation, and we're spending less today than we did 3 years ago, and we'll spend less next fiscal year than we do today, and of course those. So that shows you that it can be done. And when you hear all this, oh, you can't be done, some of these other states, oh, they just have to do this, federal debt, $39 trillion, all this. We've done really, really big things in Florida over this period of time. I mean, we did Moving Florida Forward, which is still underway, massive infusion to accelerate these projects. And every time I'm in Polk County, someone will say something to me about the I-4. We were able to do that temporary lane, and then it's going to get better as that full project lands. But I literally told the FDOT, I said, okay, we're doing this. I want evidence that it's mattering, right? So they did the videos, and they showed the traffic, and you saw the difference, and that means something to people. And there's a whole host of other things we're doing in Central Florida. Some of this stuff wasn't even scheduled to start until next decade. We're starting it, and we're going to deliver it 5 or 10 years ahead of schedule. And so we've never had that type of infusion in infrastructure in the state's history. And that's in addition to all the normal budget, which is substantial as well. And we were proud to do that. We needed to do that. We've also done a lot on environmental restoration. This Everglades in South Florida is the largest environmental restoration in the history of the United States of America. And we took the bull by the horns on that 7 years ago. We said we're going to do big things, and we've now delivered these reservoirs, raising the Tamiami Trail. You got water flowing down to Florida Bay. The feds have given us, under President Trump, they've given us jurisdiction over some of their projects because we can do them faster, so they're paying us to do it, and then they're doing their part. And we're going to get it done now because of that teamwork 5 years ahead of where we were scheduled under the Biden administration. That is a huge thing. That's billions and billions and billions of dollars. And so we've been doing that within the context of this budget. Education, which we're here today to talk about, we've had more money go into school districts than we've ever had. We have highest per pupil spending. And I'm not one to say the money is going to drive, because some of the most lavishly funded school districts in this country are some of the worst performing. in some of these areas, because a lot of that money is really not going for students, it's going to the system and to the entrenched interests in the system. But never be that as it may, we have done that. Even as we've done universal school choice, we're still putting money here. And the budget that I'll sign, we started, because, people say, what about teacher salaries? The way Florida funds education, you have the local, and then you have the state sending money down, a very complicated formula, but ultimately the school districts get that money and then they spend it. And so you can increase education spending. There's no guarantee that that will mean higher salaries for teachers, because there's other decision makers in that. So we said, listen, if we're going to do this, we want it to go in their pockets. And particularly to recruit new teachers, you got to have better salaries than where we're at. So we started a categorical, can only be used to fund salaries for teachers. It started off, I think, at a few $100 million, which was pretty big deal at the time. And this budget I'm assigned, I think it's $1.58 billion, including $202 million that goes exclusively to teachers with 10 years more of experience. And part of the reason doing that is because we did a big emphasis on getting the average minimum salary from $39,000 to $50,000, which is good, and it makes it more attractive for young people coming out of college who want to go to the profession and recruit other people. But we also wanted to do that. So you're doing that. And then higher education. We have the #1 ranked public education system in the country. And yet, since January of 2019, when I got in till now, the amount of tuition increases that have been instituted is easy to calculate: 0. Not 1 penny of increase in tuition. So we have by far the lowest in-state tuition of any state in the United States, but yet we're able to support our universities. We're providing strong funding across the board in many different respects, and people have more opportunity as a result of that. So, and all that. So doing big things, we are spending money on things that matter. Budget's going down, and our debt is also going down. So if you take all the debt in the history of the state of Florida from the 1840s to the present, just since my term in office, or my 2 terms in office, we've paid down 51% of the state's total debt. So we now have the lowest per capita debt in the country. I think it's like if you said what every Floridian owed, if we had to just pay it, which we won't have to do that, I think it's like $350, $400 a person. Do you want to know what your share would be of the national debt if you had to cut a check to extinguish that? I think it's about $125,000, and that's not even counting unfunded liabilities. That's just kind of the paper number. So we've been able to do that. We accelerated the repayment, and when you're accelerating debt reduction, you can retire usually the principal at a discount, get these bonds on the open market. Not always, but you can. And then, so you save on principal, then you have a lot of interest costs that you don't have to bear going forward. So we've ended up saving probably a couple $2 billion just because of that aggressive program, and that's really the way it's done. So all that will come in for a landing within the next couple days. I guess probably Monday, given that it's a Friday, we're probably not going to sign it on the weekend. So we're finishing up on that. And so just know that when you have a state like ours that has 4 million more people than New York, and we're going to deliver a budget that's in the $117 billion range all in, New York State's budget's $268 billion. And yet they always need to tax more. Where is that money going? Where is this tax money going? It just doesn't ever seem to work. And so we've really worked hard in not taxing people and making sure they can keep more of their money in a variety of ways, including with home ownership, which is important. They're doing the opposite, and the results speak for themselves. So I want to thank everybody that's been involved in that. I mean, I know we've had a lot of folks in the legislature, particularly over the last 4 years, that I think have shared the vision. And look, I got to go and pair the budget with line item veto, and there's sometimes I've had to do that a lot in the past. Sometimes I have to do a little less. And but the reality is we will be in a situation where this next fiscal year will be less spending than the current. And not that we're spending a lot. I mean, we're very lean, but you can always try to do better, and that's exactly what we're doing. Which brings us to today. on education. I talked about some of the budget highlights. These things are something that's really, really important. When I got in, Florida had a long history, probably 15, 20-year history of demanding accountability and measuring performance, which I think is a good thing. And I know that was started probably in the late 90s, where we want to see whether kids are actually learning, how the schools are performing. And so there was a system that was set up where schools would be graded. And look, none of these measurements are ever perfect. There's always things you can say here or there, but the reality is you don't want to fly blind. You want to make sure you're measuring progress, and then you want to make sure you can hold folks accountable if there's not enough progress. And so that system had evolved, but the primary tool of measurement was this high-stakes end-of-year test. I mean, it started, when I was younger, they called it the FCAT, and it evolved. But it was at the end, and kind of they would prepare for that test, I think, for a couple weeks leading into it. So it was like a big part of the actual curriculum, certainly towards the end of the year. That was like during COVID, when COVID, everything was going crazy. Most of our kids were on spring break. And, the question was, are they going to do the tests? And so our education commissioner recommended suspending the tests and not doing it that year, and which, it was a lot of uncertainty. It was a totally reasonable decision. And so, as we get into like April, I'm thinking to myself, obviously Florida, I was like, we got to get going here. We can't just what are we going to do? So I was like, at the time, talking about, we got to get the kids back in school. Oh my gosh, you would have thought, I don't even know what you would have thought. I mean, the reaction was akin to murdering a puppy on live TV. I mean, people were just like, what is this guy thinking? Was that? But the reality was, we knew, pretty much, as we got in the middle of April, kids doing home and virtual, that just wasn't cutting it. But the reality was, the school year didn't have that much longer, and a lot of that I found, it was like, well, Governor, you want to have this big fight and try to force these schools open when all they're going to do is study for a test that they're not actually having to take this year? And I'm like, oh man, I didn't realize all this went into it. And eventually, we obviously laid down the marker. We got sued. We said schools would be open. Look, Polk County, a lot of people wanted the schools open, right? But not true in every part of the state. So we had to kind of fight through that. But that kind of dawned on me. I'm like, man, you study all year and then you kind of focus on the test. I mean, it's a real high stakes test. And what I found as a student was, if I really crammed for a test over 3 or 4 days, I'd take the test, and then I'd kind of forget about whatever I learned. It didn't really sink in. I didn't really internalize it. It was like a sugar high of knowledge. And so I was like, yeah, maybe that's not right. And then people were saying, if a student doesn't do well on the test, how do you remediate? They're on summer vacation by the time they get the results. Parents aren't going to go in and talk to the teacher at that point, because that's no longer the child's teacher. So I was open to reform. And then, look, there were some people that were critical of just the testing. Some people didn't like it because they didn't want any measurements. There was just a lot of people were saying, is there a way you could do it better? And so we embraced this idea, and we didn't create it. I mean, it was something that people had been talking about for a long time. Rather than just do one high-stakes end-of-year test, we can do periodic assessments throughout the school year, and we've called that progress monitoring. So you go in, it is a test, you do it, and if you don't do well, then you have time to remediate. The teacher can talk to the parents. The parents could go in, talk to the teacher. The parents could take some action with the child. There's a whole host of things that can be done. So you do that throughout the course of the year. So it's less about a high stakes, have you crammed enough to do the test, and more about kind of an accurate assessment of how these students are progressing throughout the school year. And when we did it, it was a big change for Florida. I think there's a lot of people that were excited about it, but like anything, when you do it, you're never sure exactly how it's going to work. So we've now had 4 straight school years utilizing this statewide progress monitoring testing. A lot of other states, some states don't do any type of testing. Others have stuck with kind of the end of the year. And so the question is, how have these results paid off, if at all? And I'm pleased to say today that we can say the results have been positive. In fact, I was able to say earlier this year that we had the record graduation rate for Florida at 92.2% from the previous school year, which is a big deal and something that I know a lot of parents appreciate. So today we're able to kind of piggyback on that with another great announcement. We're able to give and celebrate the historic results for our end-of-year progress monitoring. And for the first time ever, more than 60% of Florida students are performing at or above grade level in both English language arts and in mathematics. So this is a record for our state. So when we started this, 49% of students scored at or above grade level on end-of-year English language arts progress monitoring assessment. That number has now increased to 61% over these 4 years. You know, that means more than 150,000 additional students are now meeting or exceeding expectations in English language arts. 53% of students scored on or above grade level in mathematics in 2023 assessment. Now, 62% of students are performing at that level, and that's an improvement of 9 percentage points. That translates to about 115,000 students performing at or above grade level over and above than where we were in 2023. So I think this innovation was the right way to go. I believed in it. It made sense. I thought it would be good for students, and now we're seeing that this is really paying off. So I want to thank everybody that's been involved in this. You know, we're here. We did the policy, which is important, but ultimately the success is not ours. The success is the success of the people who are actually on the ground doing this every day throughout schools in the state of Florida. And where are you on the privates doing the progress monitoring? You wanted to do that, or? Yeah, okay. You know, the issue is like, so we have universal school choice. The parent is making the decision, and the question is what assessments do they have to do, or do we, you know, I mean, because basically we're just saying parents can make the decision. So we've not really gotten involved in kind of micromanaging any of that, because I think there's probably more downside than upside to it. But nevertheless, this is a model that works. I think you're going to see more and more of the scholarship schools move to progress monitoring. I think some of them already do it, but I think you're going to see more and more as a result of the success of this. So I'm excited. A couple, just to tie a bow before I bring the speakers up, we are going to mention the budget. So we'll now have about $9,400 for our FEFP per pupil. So that's $150 more. I think when I started, it was probably about $7,000 or $7,500, something like that. So that's been an increase. We have, and the total funding is about $30 billion, whereas I think when I got in, it was probably 21, 22 billion, something like that. So you've seen that. And base student allocation is up, $85 a student. And then I mentioned the $200 million increase for experience. We don't have tenure, but kind of the longer standing teachers that have been there for a while, and that'll make a big difference. And look, the districts can supplement that. I mean, we're just saying it's got to go to teacher salary, and that 1.58 has to go, but certainly that 201 for the 10 plus. You want to kick in more money? Kick in more money. I mean, by all means, do it. It's not just, that's not exclusive to what they can get. We also have $3.9 million for our civics and debate initiative, which is something that we started really, I think, in earnest in 2020. We didn't have very much speech and debate throughout Florida. Now all school districts have speech and debate. We had hundreds of students at New College. The winner of the debate got $50,000 scholarship through the foundation. $25,000 for second place, $15,000 for semifinalists, and $10,000 for quarterfinalists, which, you know, that's real money in a state university system where it's $6,300 a year tuition, right? I mean, that's not, you know, $100,000 for MIT or $10,000 for MIT, you know, that'll buy you a lunch plan. Here, it makes a difference, and so I appreciate doing that. We also had $3 million to support school districts for improvement of civic literacy for our students using regional civics literacy captains and coaches. $1.5 million, an increase of $1 million for Civics Professional Development Initiative, and then $7 million for Florida Civic School of Excellence program, which that's an interesting program. So we were saying civics, we want to do civics, and I've been harping on that long before America 250 got in, although I will say we're doing more on America 250 than any state, not even close. We commissioned statues of founding fathers to go in the counties where they're named for. So we got Washington in Washington County, Franklin. In some of these states, the founding fathers are disfavored in some parts of the country, so I get them on a discount. These are very good statutes to be able to get. I bring them in, we do it. We got Madison, Hamilton, Monroe. We've got a lot of those, and it's something that I think is important because it's not just a date on the calendar. I mean, it's 250 years of a very important event in not just the history of this country, but in human history. And they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and sacred honor to establish a nation conceived in liberty. They set out the statement and the Declaration, created the framework the next decade with the Constitution, and then later with the Bill of Rights. And, sometimes we live up to those ideals. When you do, we do well. When you don't, we don't do as well. And so part of what I think we've tried to do in Florida is really represent that spirit of 1776. Different times, different issues, but the principles endure as things that are true and things that are right. And so we've really worked hard to do that on America too. And we also did people that have exemplified the founding ethos throughout history, particularly if there's a connection to Florida. So we did Frederick Douglass in St. Augustine. He gave a speech in the late 1880s, real barn burner. He was down there talking about things like civil rights. We've done Ronald Reagan down at Florida International University. The president's house was named after Reagan many years ago. So we did this massive, beautiful statue of our 40th president right there. And then here in Polk County, we did President Calvin Coolidge at Bok Tower Gardens, which a lot of people didn't even know. First of all the things I've seen in Florida, from an architecture and beauty perspective, Bok Tower is the most underrated place in this state, not even close. I mean, it's a beautiful area, amazing architecture. And so, people in Central Florida know, some people throughout the, but I don't think it's as known as it should be. But even amongst people that knew that, a lot of them didn't know President Coolidge dedicated it when they did it in 1929. So once we found that out, I'm like, oh man, we've got to do that. And so we did a Coolidge statue at Bok Tower, and and I'm actually going to we brought his biographer, and we did a fireside chat. And I'm going to do the introduction for the next edition of the Coolidge autobiography. So we're working on that now, and we're going to do that. But we did that there. And we've got some others coming down the pike as well that we'll do, not just even before the 4th, but we'll continue the celebration throughout the year. So I'm proud we've done that. I'm proud we've leaned in on it. But that's not just something Johnny-come-lately. We've been talking about civics from the beginning. And one of the things that I learned is we can sit there and say, got to know the Declaration of Independence. You need to know some of the Federalist Papers. You got to know this. You got to know that. That's great. It's great to say that. It's great to say here are the standards. It's great to say you got to know this writer or this statesman, all this stuff. But you need instructors that have that foundation as well. And you want instructors ideally that are inspired by that, inspired by those ideas, and really take those ideas seriously. And the reality is, and we've obviously worked to correct this in Florida, we have the Hamilton School for Classical Learning. Jennifer knows about that because her husband, our former great justice, is now the head of the Hamilton School at the University of Florida. It's the #1 center in America already. It's only like 4 years old. #1 center in America for the study of classical learning and Western civilization. We got amazing scholars that have gotten brought in because we changed the law so that they can be hired directly. Not going to be blackballed by ideological faculty. So we're bringing in people, Princeton, Harvard, Oxford, people that basically want a change of scenery, and they want to have a campus where they can, their ideas are respected and free speech, and it's not just about indoctrination. So that's really, really done well. And we're proud of that. We have the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom down at the Florida International University in Miami. I was telling these Scots we had that. They were thankful that we were doing Adam Smith because, he published Wealth of Nations 250 years ago in Edinburgh, Scotland. We've done that. We have New College in Sarasota, which was kind of like a Marxist commune. Now it's been transformed into a classical liberal arts college. Got a lot of stuff going on there. I think the sky's the limit. Florida State, we have an institute. And so all this stuff, I think, is working very, very well. But most schools do not, most states do not have that. Most private school universities in this country are not focusing on that type of thought. They're more trendy ideologies and focusing on things that, quite frankly, I think are academic sugar highs. I don't think that there's really lasting value in some of the stuff that they're emphasizing. But this is the building blocks of Western civilization. And we're talking about at the Hamilton School. This is what built this country. We wouldn't have the country without those great principles, going all the way back to the ancients in Greece and Rome, all the way through Christendom, Enlightenment, all this stuff. Very, very important. But that's not what you get when you go through these schools. So we found a need to provide teachers with an ability to access this in a way that would be meaningful but also doable. So we started this program. The teachers, it's not limited to civics teachers, history teachers, heck, English teachers, because there's themes in American literature that reflects all this. You go through, it's a 50-hour course. We've got a lot of scholars from around the country that have contributed to this. You are studying the building blocks. You're going to have familiarity with all the things that led to the formation and establishment of this republic, and you get $3,000 as a bonus for going through the program. I think when they rate the course, I think it's like a 93% rate of this is a good, worthwhile course. There's not very many courses that get 93%. And I think the reason why it's been popular, the reason why people like it, is because, these are the time-tested truths that successful societies have been built upon. It's not just studying some intellectual fad. I mean, these things have stood the test of time, and we've worked really hard to be able to do that. So we have more money. I mean, we've paid out. I mean, how much have we paid out in that? We've paid out a lot over the years, certainly tens of millions of dollars in bonuses to teachers, and we've put through tens of thousands of teachers with doing it, and we're happy that, and we want to do more. But the reason why I think civics is important is because maybe you get prepared to go into the workforce right after high school, and we have certification programs, and honestly, I think that's a great pathway for many people. Maybe you want to go and you want to go into business, and so you go to college and you study that, or you want to be in doctor, or you want to do law. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could do, it's just, got battle scars to prove that. All these different things. But no matter which way you choose, which path you take, everyone that comes out of our K-12 system will be called upon to exercise the duty of being an American citizen, to being somebody that has responsibilities in this republic. And I think we are not doing the people that have sacrificed for us justice, but certainly we're not doing our kids and grandkids justice if we're just graduating a bunch of blank slates, students that don't really have the foundation to know what it means to be an American. So we've worked really hard to address that in Florida. I know there's a lot more work to do, but I'll tell you, there's not any state that's done more. I was speaking with someone that's pretty prominent in another state and had been on the civics kick for a long time. And when our Civic Seal of Excellence program was out in the curriculum, he's like, man, I just started crying. He's like, this is what this country had needed for all these many decades, and now we're returning to principle, and we're returning to truth. And so we're happy to lead that effort. All right, I'm excited about the progress monitoring. I know there's always more work to do, but this was the right decision to go to progress monitoring. This was the right thing to do, and our students and our teachers are benefiting. Sasi?
Well, good morning. Thank you for being here. This is such an incredible celebration. Thank you, Superintendent Hyde and the incredible school board here at Polk County. I'm excited to get to know each and every one of you. It was a pleasure, School Board Member Sharpless, to get to know you and your son this morning as you all are here celebrating these results that impact him as well. He's heading into third grade, and we know that is the most important year when it comes to English language arts and demonstrating proficiency on grade level with reading. There is such an emphasis that this state has placed, an emphasis on the science of reading and ensuring that these students are understanding how to read and what they're reading, quite frankly. And so we know that that changes the trajectory of a child's life, and I'm excited because these results are what we tout year after year as a measurement, not just of our success as a state, but as the governor put it, those who are in the trenches, the teachers, the parents who are working together for what matters most, the students, and ensuring that the next generation of students is learning appropriately in the subject areas. I know we talked about English and math, but I also have the opportunity to talk about science and civics, which is incredible numbers that we have here as well. I'd be remiss if I did not thank my current chair, because I am still the Commissioner of Education, the chair of the State Board of Education, Ryan Petty, for being here. He may have had something to do with convincing me to move down to Polk County because he does live here, but amazing work we've done over the year. I am incredibly thankful for your leadership and your friendship, so thank you for being here today. We also have members of the Polk County or Polk State College Board of Trustees. So my new bosses, as I transition into the new role here on July 6th, Steve Lester, who is the chief to, I told this to Wayne Ivey and to Chris Nalco, the greatest sheriff in all of the state of Florida, now that I live in Polk County, Grady Judd. We also have Kyle Davis, who also serves on the Board of Trustees. And I know Ashley Bell Barnett could not be here, but she did send her mother, Melody Bell. So thank you for joining us. So there is strong Polk State College representation. And for the students who are watching out there, come on down. We're looking forward to doing incredible impacts in your lives and honestly on the lives of the community. I want to thank Tamara Sakagawa. Sorry, I was practicing that. With a last name like mine, you would think I would have been more intentional of getting it right. I apologize, but thank you for being here. Tamara serves as the Vice President and Chief of Staff currently at Polk State College and has been instrumental in what this transition will look like, so I appreciate your leadership. And I saw one of the professors here, Maury from Polk State College, who is instrumental in the Agri-Polk program and the agricultural program that is starting over at the Bartow campus. Looking forward to working together. And of course, we have the future Speaker of the House of Representatives, Jennifer Kennedy. You want to talk about someone who is invested in civics and debate. She was with me at that competition down in New College and had the opportunity to meet with the students, meet with the parents, meet with these coaches who take so much time to invest on a weekend, not just after school, to pour into the lives of these students and allow them to develop skills that are so necessary for their success. And so it's great to be a part of this education system. Great to celebrate today. I will say it was a tough couple weeks in education, particularly as it relates to educator misconduct. We did have the teacher out of Pasco County that admitted to making comments to students in her high school class that the president deserved a bullet to the head. As we talk about civics and debate and civil discourse and respectful dialogue, this is exactly the kind of conduct that we are continuing to root out. It is just an impediment to students. That is not the kind of pattern that needs to be repeated. I don't care who the president is. I don't care what their party affiliation is. You never wish harm on someone, regardless of the disagreements. And so it is so important that we are training the next generation of students to understand you can respectfully disagree. It is a huge component of what we're going to do as I start my new path over at Polk State College, an emphasis on civil discourse. And so you had that, and you had yesterday, I was with the Attorney General, where there was an arrest that was taking place of a fraudulent scheme of an individual who was taking educator certification exams on behalf of teachers so that they can pass the test and now go into the classroom. So that individual was arrested. The individuals who received the certificate as a result are being investigated. We are working with the districts to ensure that they are not in a classroom, that they are not making direct contact with students. And so I say that because it was a tough week for education, and then I saw these results. And I was so encouraged and so excited to be able to announce that just 4 years ago, we were at 49% in English language arts. We're now at 61%. And yeah, those numbers are impressive, but then I heard 150,000 more students are now on grade level. That's literally hundreds of thousands of lives that are now benefiting from the hard work that people are pouring into this educational system, into their lives, into the hard work that's being done on a daily basis. And then I saw in math, we went from 53% to 62%. Incredible. 115,000 more students now are able to meet the basic proficiency levels that are necessary for their academic achievement. And so I'm incredibly thankful to the hard work of the folks who do it across the state. Governor, you have absolutely led with conviction when it comes to education in particular. It has been a top priority of your administration. I thank the legislature for the record investments that they've made in education. They don't just talk the talk, but they put their money where their mouth is, and then you sign off on those appropriations and make sure that we are implementing them with fidelity so that we can be here today making this impressive announcement. These gains are especially significant because they represent not just hundreds of thousands of students, but subgroups across the board are up. You know, when we talk about English language arts, English language learners, African American students, Hispanic students, and economically disadvantaged students were up 5 percentage points when we looked at the data in English language arts. In math, it was up 6 percentage points for English language learners, 4 percentage points for Hispanic students, and 3 percentage points for economically disadvantaged students and African American students. For students with disability, they were up 2 percentage points in English language arts, and they were 3 percentage points in English language arts and 2 percentage points in mathematics. That is tremendous, tremendous gains, and so we are extremely pleased to see that when you are focused on merit, when you are focused on achievement, when you set aside the individual's background or the way they look, and you focus on how can we meet them where they're at the beginning of the year, in that initial 30 days when we review and assess the student and see, okay, where are they struggling? What are their strengths? And then you assess them again in the middle of the school year to see, okay, was there growth? If there was not, we need to provide immediate intervention, and we need to make sure that the student is learning. And then you measure them again at the end of the year to ensure that what you did in the middle of the year was actually successful. And the way it was before, you'd wait to the end of the year, as the governor said, and then the summer started. You didn't really have an opportunity to be able to provide the appropriate interventions to that student. Sure, some of the students were able to go to summer school, but that wasn't always the case. And so you lost a generation of students, and it just breaks my heart to think about those students were not receiving the services that they needed to get to where they needed to be. So we talked about English and we talked about math, but I want to talk about civics and science as well, because 60% of our students who are in 5th grade were also able to demonstrate proficiency in science. 74% of our students were able to demonstrate proficiency in biology. That's up 4 percentage points from just last year. And with civics, we are very proud of civics. The governor talked about the speech and debate initiative. He talked about the Civics Seal of Excellence that gives teachers a $3,000 stipend, which is huge for them. But we have a wait list still for that Civics Seal of Excellence because of how popular it is. And I appreciate the legislature continuously funding that program because we are seeing the results. 76% of our students are scoring on or above grade level in civics, which is an increase of 6 percentage points from last year. And 73% of the students are scoring on or above grade level in U.S. history, which is an increase of 3 percentage points from last year. And so we are very proud of the progress that Florida students have made, and the momentum continues to build across schools in this state. Florida's student-centered approach is driving real results and has positioned our state as a national leader in education. Progress monitoring is very popular, not just with us at the state, not just with the lawmakers, but we have heard, and I'm excited to hear remarks here from school board member Kate Wallace, because we have heard from parents, we have heard from teachers, we have heard from school board members and superintendents who have told us this is working, this is making a difference. There's always going to be attacks when something is first rolled out, but I think we're at a point now that people realize this is an amazing policy that was championed, and it's really making a difference in the lives of students across the state. So thank you so much for being here to celebrate with you all, to celebrate with us, and God bless you all.
Good morning. For those of you visiting here, first I'd like to welcome you to Lakeland High School, home of the Dreadnoughts, and also one of Polk County's crown gems in the Harrison School for the Arts. I just got to witness 4 of our students from Harrison School of the Arts earn Arts for Life scholarships from Governor and Mrs. Kalimba Bush, or Governor Jeb Bush and Kalimba Bush. And that was the first time in the 27-year history that 4 of the 35 scholarships awarded were from Polk County. So I want to congratulate the teachers and staff and students here. And also, I'd like to acknowledge some of our City of Lakeland leaders that are here too. First and foremost, our Mayor, Sarah Roberts McCarley, who is a former PTO mom here at Lakeland and Harrison. So thank you for helping to build the school what it is and now our community, as well as Commissioner Guy Lalonde. Thank you, sir, for being here. And I'm making sure I didn't miss anybody else from the Lakeland City Commission, but thank you all for your leadership and your partnership. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Commissioner, and our legislature. We're so excited to have you all here and to celebrate in this great success. And while the district-specific numbers are not out yet, we feel very confident here in Polk County that we're going to have a lot of smiling faces and much to celebrate. And I'd also first like to thank our school board, my colleagues on the school board, Chair Justin Sharpless, Vice Chair Travis Keys, Sarah Beth Wyatt, Kay Fields, and also our board members that aren't here with us today, Lisa Miller and Dr. William Allen. Our board is focused on our motto, students first. And we believe that this data is going to show that our district is moving in the right direction. And we really thank all Polk County parents. You have choices. We embrace those choices. We're working hard to bring you more quality, innovative options as we speak. But we really appreciate it when you trust us and entrust us with your child's education. And we want to earn your trust every year through showing, through objective measures, that we deserve that trust and that your child is getting a quality education. Like the Commissioner and Governor said, the move to progress monitoring was great because it's helping our adults in the system, the parents and the students as they age, see exactly how they stack up, where they're doing well, where they need improvement, and all the time that is spent around assessment is not in vain because we can react to it in real time. And some people don't like testing. Testing isn't always fun for everybody. I remember very well taking lots of tests, but the same reasons that we take our children to the doctor from the day that they're born and hopefully while they're in the womb. But every year and frequently we take them to the doctor, we get labs, we get assessments, we get pricked. Those are not fun, but we do that because we want to make sure that health is trending in the right direction. And if it looks great, then we can celebrate that and keep doing what we're doing. If we see disturbing signs or concerning signs, we follow up and we get to the root cause to intervene. That's exactly why we progress monitor, and that's exactly what we're seeing here in Polk County. I also want to thank our superintendent, Fred Hyde, and he has experience having worked at the Florida Department of Education as an accountability chief. And that was one of my favorite attributes about his background when he came to Polk County with us 5 years ago now, Superintendent, because that let me know, as I was a private citizen at the time, but that was going to be and remains his top priority. And he and his cabinet and our principals and our teachers and our partners and our supportive staff are all helping ensure our district is moving in the right direction. So I just want to share a couple of facts, which are, in the last 5 years, we've eliminated any F schools from our district. We've significantly reduced the number of D schools we have, and in fact, we feel confident that in the current trajectory that we're on, that someday soon and very soon, we'll be able to say we have no D schools for the first time in the 27-year history of A through F school grading. And in addition to that, we're seeing a rising number of A and B schools. And we want Polk County parents, and not just the current ones, but folks who are looking to move here, they are looking up our school grades, and they're seeing what we're offering. And the more A's and B's we offer, the more attractive it is for, we talk about talent pipelines, not only filling our vacancies in teachers, but what about doctors? What about nurses? What about accountants? What about higher education and other professions? Those individuals who choose those professions, and law enforcement, sheriff, they're looking at where are they going to send their children and grandchildren to school. And as we see our numbers and outcomes rise, that's going to be great for Polk County and our overall economic and quality of life. And this isn't just about numbers and letter grades. This is about, I just said, quality of life. When that student earns grade level and above, or when we have the rising record high graduation rates that we now have, that's changing lives. I'm from Bartow, and I've seen firsthand students become the first members of their family to earn a high school diploma. That's opening doors to matriculate to Polk State. That's making them more eligible for scholarships. That's making them eligible for the military. That's making More students have the confidence as they matriculate through our system that they are capable. And I think the stat, this is an old stat, but I think given how the fact that we have around 3 million children in our public schools, we have more children from disadvantaged backgrounds testing on grade level than other states have children. So when Florida sets these high bars and we say that all children can learn, that we expect all of our children to achieve, that we're going to hold the system accountable and the adults in the system accountable, and we're not afraid to bear ourselves even when there are certain numbers we don't like, we're willing to have those conversations with the public. I, again, just want to thank our state leadership, and I also want to know just from my back, or want you all to know that other states watch us and copy us, and that means that there are children from coast to coast benefiting from Florida's sustained leadership. So thank you again, congratulations, and thank you, Governor, for the opportunity to serve on this board. It's changed my life, and I'm so grateful to everyone here.
All right, well, we'll keep the progress going. I'm excited. I know that a lot of people have worked very hard on it. As I said at the top, we had to make a judgment on the policy. We had to change the policy to embrace progress monitoring, and that was the right decision. It was the right thing to do. But in terms of the success as a result that's been now reflected in that, that is those are people on the ground that are getting that done. And so good on you for doing it, and we will continue to plow ahead. All right, do we have any questions back there? Yes. Because they did a bill on e-bike regulation, and I'm not like, I don't know these things, like maybe there's problems, but what it will lead to is more surveillance of people by law enforcement, and we don't need that. And so I think that there was problems with it. They also set up an e-bike commission, but it's like, okay, you're already substantively legislating. Why are you doing a commission? If you're going to do a commission, then the commission can come and do other things. So I thought it potentially would have some unintended consequences, but certainly I don't want to do anything that's going to lead to more surveillance. I understand that there's law enforcement has a job. Obviously, I've been supportive of Grady and everybody, but like, do we really want to have policing of e-bikes, and are you going 10 miles or 8 miles or whatever? It's just, I think it was a little bit of an overreach. Yes. Well, Stassi, I think I can say that the students prefer it to the old system. It was the thing that there was a lot of weight being put on that one end-of-year, very high-stakes test. And, I'm not saying that was totally bad. I mean, sometimes you got to perform under pressure. It just is what it is. But there was an adequate opportunity for remediation. And if you're doing progress monitoring, you can remediate, and you can monitor the progress as it's gone on. So it wasn't anything we invented. This was an array of policy options that were kind of out there. We embraced it. And my sense is that if you took a vote amongst faculty, students, and parents, I don't think you'd have a very high percentage wanting to go back to the old system. I think people think that this is doing a better job. We got to measure. We got to have standards. We've got to see who's meeting them. You got to do that, but how you do that is a matter for debate, and I think we did debate that in Florida, came to this conclusion, and I think it was the right conclusion. And you know what? Maybe 5 or 10 years in the future, there'll be a different type of way to measure this that'll be good for students and teachers and parents, and that's possible. But as of right now, this is probably the best thing to do. Now, just popped into my head. It's not even fully related, but you have some are with like the rise of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not a substitute for a human being teaching in the classroom. And this notion that somehow we're just going to have robots do all this, that will not work. That's not something that we should aspire to. And I think that the importance of having a real, live, beating heart human being in there that has, cares about the students, that's working hard to try to figure out what needs to be done. There's not going to ever be a substitute for that. And I'm not saying technology can't supplement. I'm not saying it can't be a good tool. But the idea that that's going to displace having teachers in the classroom. There may be some that try that, but I don't think it will work out well. I think that, good education, quite frankly, you go back to America, to go back to our founding fathers getting educated, good education, it's not really that much different, right? I mean, these things they are what they are, and the best way to do it is to have that teacher there with the students. So count me as somebody that's on Team Human on that one. All right, thanks everybody. God bless. We'll see ya.